All right, one last look at your traffic and weather for your ride in on this Monday morning. And thankfully, it seems like because there's aren't as many schools open and people coming to work late, not as many things going on the road right now. Just a disabled vehicle at I-77 and Fort Jackson Boulevard. But that is it as far as road obstructions go. Today, going to be a little bit warmer than it has been the past couple days. High of 46. Overnight low though is going to get back down to about 17 tomorrow. A high of 43. Right now, cloudy and 37 in downtown Columbia. That's traffic and weather here on the game. You're going to have AAA at the first break. Oh, 9 o'clock on your Monday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri along with you here on the game. Thankfully, having survived the storm of the weekend. I'm here in Columbia. Jack, I believe are you still in Charlotte? Is that where you're at?
Yeah, I'm still in Charlotte. I'm looking outside the window. There's snow on the ground. It's not a full blanket anymore in the street, but you can definitely still see there's snow everywhere here. So
It seems like it kind of skirted the Midlands a little bit. And look, I was keeping a close eye on the forecast as the week went along last week. But as we got closer to the weekend, it seemed like it kept pushing further and further out here in Columbia and Lexington and all that kind of stuff. And there was some ice yesterday. I went outside and it was flurrying a little bit, and there was ice stuck to the car, but nothing like crazy. But I've seen the pictures from the upstate up there in Charlotte from what you've sent me, and that's kind of where the worst of it seem to really go. So hopefully everybody's in good shape up there. But it seems like everything in the Midlands for the most part is okay.
yeah, not surprising. I feel like the Midlands. I mean, we got a good bit of snow around this time last year, but it's not too often we get snow in Columbia, so I'm not surprised here.
Lose power or anything like that? All that
No,
good.
no, everything's good. Yeah, it's just I was surprised we even got snow because it was 2 nights ago that it was raining a little bit, maybe a little bit of hail, but woke up the next morning yesterday and saw a full blanket on the ground. I'm like,
Mm.
wow, was not expecting that at all. I didn't think we'd get snow. Definitely
Yeah.
ice, but did not expect snow.
Well, the supermarkets were cleaned out here locally at the end of last week, so hopefully, everybody can still enjoy the milk and bread that they consumed in mass quantity, or but at least bought in mass quantities at the end of last week.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, it was one of those things. Like, and again, I was keeping an eye on everything, and I didn't think it was going to end up being that bad here locally. But like, my mom was constantly calling me, asking how everything was, and she even told me like I didn't even know this, an alternative heat source when you take a ceramic pot and put a candle underneath it that can like heat an entire room. So I was prepared to do that if I needed to. Thankfully, I didn't, because again, it just was very light and brisk coming through the Midlands. But I was prepared.
Hmm, interesting. Yeah. I've not heard of that one, so that's pretty neat.
Yeah, learn something new every day. So again, not too bad around here. If you're in the upstate or around the state, hopefully you didn't get it too bad yourself. And again, looks like all the pretty much everywhere around here, temperature's going to be up in the high 40s to around 50 in the next couple days. It'll melt all the snow and ice, and we'll get everything back to normal pretty quickly. So thankfully, seems like we all survived the weekend that was the snowstorm and all that. Plenty of sports content to talk about from over the weekend. But first, it is 9 o'clock. I must kick things off with our Sandstorm Pick Me Up.
Time Time to get hyped. Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm, sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
Oh, it is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick Me Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803 all nines. It was a busy weekend sports-wise. Had some things that did get moved around because of the weather. Men's basketball out in College Station got their game moved up a couple of hours and to make sure that they get back home here safely. And women's basketball didn't have any change to their schedule yesterday. And you want to talk about two programs on completely opposite ends of the spectrum for how their results went. Men's basketball gets absolutely obliterated by Buckyball on Saturday. And women's basketball, well, they decided they were going to punch back in their game against Vanderbilt after losing to Oklahoma the other day.
Yeah, that was totally two different ends of the spectrum is the perfect way to put it. And I know we'll get into it plenty here pretty soon, but yeah, definitely not a little surprised. South Carolina went to A&M, just got their doors blown off the way they did. There's a good reason for that. And then you look at the women's basketball game, not really surprised to see them win, but a little bit of a surprise just to see how dominant they were. I'm assuming there were a lot of frustrations taken out in that game. So, good for them, but men's basketball not looking good right now.
Yeah, we'll get into a little bit of what Lamont Paris had to say coming up here in just a few minutes. But the entire sports world keeping their eye on what was happening in the NFL over the weekend with the conference championship games to decide who was going to go to Super Bowl 60. And man, we got two very different games yesterday. We got a game very much affected by snow out in Denver that ends up 10-7 final with the Patriots punching their tickets to Santa Clara, and then a wildly entertaining, especially in the second half, back and forth contest between the Seahawks and the Rams, a game that pretty much lived up to the billing from what their prior to contest had been earlier on this year, where they were separated by 1 point and 1 yard between those two games. And once again, it comes down to the wire between those two NFC West divisional rivals.
Yeah, where do you want to start? I guess we'll start with the AFC game, the more boring game, I would say.
Well, was it boring? Because I feel like the snow element makes it very compelling.
The snow, you're right. The snow element, you gotta take it, for what it is right now, because we're not going to be getting that 10 years from now, and half or more than half of the NFL has dome stadiums. So I mean, it's nice to see a game played in the elements. Look, I thought the Broncos got off to a pretty good start with Jarrett Stidham, all things considered. That I think it was like that 50-plus yard touchdown pass he had, or no, the 50-yard pass over the middle, and then the touchdown pass shortly thereafter. Got off to a pretty good start after a quick 3-and-out in this game. But the Broncos just could never really get it going. And I'll tell you what, Tyler, the early turning point of that game, and honestly the turning point of the game in general, was Sean Payton electing to go for it, up 7-0. You're in pretty good field goal range. And again, this is way before the snow ever became a factor. Maybe you're just dealing with some wind at that point. But you got Will Lutz. I don't know why you're not kicking there with a backup quarterback. I know it's 4th and 1, but it's not like if it were the Bills or something, you would assume automatically you're running the quarterback sneak, or if it's the Eagles, you're running the tush push. The Broncos didn't have that in their playbook, obviously, since the play they ran was a little bit of a play action fake. You run it to the right, and you're just trying to dump it off, I believe, to the tight end at that point. And just not a good play, not a good throw. You're just making it a lot tougher on yourself. I would have taken the points there. You hopefully go up 10-0. And look, in a game that the Patriots only needed 10 points to win, that was definitely a early blow in this one.
Well, and when you look at the way that the Denver defense played, that one touchdown they gave up was set up by the fumble by Jarrett Stidham that essentially put the Patriots right on the goal line. So your defense did plenty in that game to hold the Patriots at bay. Drake May, besides what he did with his legs, didn't have a phenomenal game through the air. And yes, the snow certainly played a part in that. But I think about it from the standpoint of, because that happened early second quarter, if the Patriots are down 10-0 in the second quarter, the way they manage a lot of that game going forward is different because they're down multiple scores, and you miss that opportunity. And what I don't believe they had any plays in Denver territory in the second half is, Jarrett Stidham tried his best, and you give him credit for that, but he wasn't able to command that offense the same way. Certainly when the weather started, coming in, and they could run the ball a little bit. But again, you're going to keep looking back at that missed opportunity of not being able to go up 10 in a game where points ended up being at a premium when you knew the weather was coming.
And I hate to say it, but I think the Patriots were definitely helped by the fact that they're facing a backup quarterback in this game, and Jared Stidham, who hadn't started a game and God, since he was with the Raiders, right? I mean,
2 years ago.
yeah, it's been a while since he started a game, and I think some of his decision making wasn't particularly the best. Like the 4th-and-1 call, I don't I don't hate going for it. I would have taken the points with a backup quarterback in there, but it's just the play call was just pretty rough. That one's on Sean Payton for sure. But the fumble there, I mean, you got to get rid of the ball. There were times in that game, even when he did get rid of the ball, his decision making was just so late with throwing the ball away when he's clearly going to take a hit, and that kind of gave the Patriots an opportunity. And ultimately, that's the only touchdown they needed. And then they get the field goal in the second half, and look, Denver had its opportunities to win this game, but when you're playing in the elements and you're trying to kick field goals much later in this game, it became nearly impossible for both teams to get anything going offensively. And ultimately, in the end, defense won this game for New England. I mean, Drake May really did nothing in this game besides a touchdown on the ground and used his legs pretty well. But passing wise, throwing for only 86 yards. Yeah, this game definitely came down to what New England's defense was able to do.
And, when the last couple years of the Belichick era were going on and the Patriots were getting worse and worse last year, they only went 4 games with Gerard Mayo as their head coach. You're like, man, is this organization ever going to get back towards the top of the NFL? Took 1 year with Mike Vrabel. Drake May, I don't think he's going to win the MVP, but he's at least going to be finishing second to Matthew Stafford. Like, I don't know if they're going to go on a dynasty type of run like the Belichick era did, but you get the right coach in place and he can take you back to that mountaintop, and Vrabel is going to have the opportunity to win a Super Bowl as not only a player, but now a head coach for the Patriots in a couple weeks.
Speaking of coaches just doing crazy things in year one, how about Mike McDonald with Seattle? I mean, it's been remarkable as we transition into the other game of the weekend with the Seahawks winning last night over the Rams and in another classic between those two teams. Seahawks, they're really good. And it's refreshing to see Sam Darnold get the flowers he deserves with playing that game yesterday. Really, I mean, that might have been like the best performance of his career, don't you think?
Yeah, I definitely so. And it's one of those things because on the season in the 2 games they'd already played, he'd thrown 6 interceptions to that Rams defense. Like clearly they were his Achilles heel. And going into the game, that's how I kind of looked at it, especially with him continuing to deal with the oblique injury. I'm like, okay, this is the game where the wheels come off and we say, oh, well, there goes the Jets version of Sam Darnold once again. But he didn't. He went out there, had a phenomenal game, and he played like, quite frankly, an MVP. Now, Matthew Stafford had a great game on the other side, so it wasn't like he played bad by any means, but Sam Darnold ultimately outdueled Matt Stafford when it mattered most. And again, I think we can now get to the point where we say, okay, maybe Sam Darnold is just a good quarterback after all. Maybe why he struggled so much early in his career is because he was with the Jets and he was with the Panthers when they were still trying to figure things out. Like maybe it was the organizations that were failing him, not Sam Darnold himself.
And how about JSN yesterday? Jackson Smith and Njigba. What a game from him. I mean, look, a lot of credit needs to go to Sam Darnold for some of the balls he placed in this game. Perfect throws. But JSN was so good yesterday. 10 catches, 153 yards, a touchdown. I mean, it was really crazy what he was doing out there, just making some of the plays that he did. You had Shaheed making great catches. I mean, this is such a good team from top to bottom. I mean, we talk about them defensively and what they're good at doing, but this offense is more than capable of going out here and just putting up a ton of points. And I think that is going to be a really good matchup come here in 2 weeks when Seattle and New England face off in Santa Clara and for Super Bowl 60. The Seahawks, really good all-around team. New England's very good defensively, obviously. I think they got to be a little bit better offensively to win this game. And I think being in Santa Clara, I'm not sure what the weather's going to be, but you can imagine it's probably going to be much warmer, sunnier out. You're not going to have to deal with the snow, I don't think. Maybe a little bit of wind. But I think Seattle, just early on, benefits greatly because their offense is really clicking right now. While New England, I know they were playing a really good defense yesterday in Denver, but keep in mind, last week, Buffalo, Josh Allen turned the ball over 5 times, yet they were able to still put up 30 points of offense against a really good defense. So I worry a little bit about New England's offense, but that defense is very good.
Yeah, it should be a fun game out there in the Super Bowl, and we'll have 2 weeks to obviously break that game down. And it could be a high scoring affair, it could be a low scoring affair. Just don't really know what you're going to get there, but two teams certainly worthy of being in the Super Bowl. Of course, Patriots were 2 seed, and the Seahawks were the 1 seed. We'll talk about we'll talk about what happened last night more as the show goes along. We'll also talk the latest of NFL hires coming up in hour number 2. We'll dive back into what happened on the hardwood over the weekend for Carolina basketball as the extra point rolls along. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri on your Monday on the game.
If you're a small business owner, a church, or other entity in need of a new HVAC system, AAA Heating and Air has exciting news for you. AAA now offers financing to qualified organizations to aid them in installing a new light commercial HVAC system. It's as easy as calling AAA Heating and Air for a quote or finding them online at callAAAtoday.com. Tell them Jack Veltri from 107.5 The Game sent you. At AAA Heating and Air, they've got your back. They're offering up to 12-month payment plans on repairs with no credit check. That's right. No need to worry about your credit score. As long as you're a homeowner with a valid bank account, you'll be good to go. Take control of your comfort today by giving a call to AAA Heating and Air, 803-677-1500. Again, the number to call AAA, 803-677-1500. Give them a call today and breathe easy again.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltry along with you here on your Monday on the game. Over the weekend, again, affected a little bit by the weather. The men's basketball game was moved up a couple of hours out there on the road in College Station. And Jack, I feel like we've been saying this so much over these past couple of weeks, but each of these games keeps feeling like a must win to give yourself some semblance of getting the season back on track. Look, you've beaten LSU, you've beaten Oklahoma, and you can make an argument that you were better than both of those teams. But you got to find a way to start knocking off teams that you're on paper not better than, and that could have started with A&M over the weekend. Unfortunately, it didn't, as South Carolina gets handled 92-69 by Bucky McMillan and the Aggies.
When I look at this game, look, I think South Carolina just did not play well enough to win this game. I will say, though, Texas A&M was just shooting at a ridiculously insane rate. I mean, they made 12 threes in the first half. And look, South Carolina was actually playing pretty well at the start of this game. They were up, I believe it was 19-16 at one point. And then from there, A&M just started making every single conceivable shot. Didn't matter where it was on the floor. They went on a 29-2 run to go up by 20-plus points at halftime. Up at halftime, 46-25. That's just absolutely insane. And from that point on, it was just tough for South Carolina to really get back in the game. They did have a nice run in the second half, but that only cut the lead down a little bit as A&M went up by 30 at one point. So, look, you lost this game by a significant gap. You got some good games in here from Michi Johnson and Kobe Knox, but besides that, Elijah Strong was pretty rough in this one. 0 of 8 from the field, 0 of 2 from three-point range.
Yeah, again, it was a game that we knew they're facing a bit of an uphill battle considering what Texas A&M does really well, and we talked about it on Friday, this concept Bucky ball and the uniqueness that they play with on offense and defense that South Carolina was going to have problems with. And again, right out of the gate, they actually did a pretty good job of getting themselves in the game, and obviously they had a lead at one point that A&M was obviously able to just kind of blow by them and dominate from there. But one thing that really stands out to me about kind of the takeaways from this that I think is going to only increase pressure on Lamont Paris is when you look at Bucky McMillan in year one at Texas A&M. Again, both these guys played in SoCon. They popped up the record. I think Lamont had the advantage when they played head to head when he was at Chattanooga. But Bucky McMillan comes in year one at A&M and was the last guy hired in this coaching cycle, as they mentioned in the broadcast on Saturday. So yes, A&M has more resources likely than South Carolina to spend in the transfer portal, but it's not like Bucky McMillan went out there and just acquired every single great player with a bunch of money and brought them in. They got what they could get, and that tells you they have the opportunity to get even better in the years to come. And this is a program in year one with a new coach has just far blown past South Carolina with what they've been able to do. So it's like, okay, here's Lamont Paris in year number 4. And after the game, he mentioned in one of his quotes, he didn't do a normal press conference. He just talked with Derek and Casey after the game, but he talked about this, being a good learning opportunity for his team. And I understand what he means by that. But in year number 4, we shouldn't be talking about learning opportunities. We should have a full identity of what this team is and what they're capable of. And here we are, almost halfway through conference play, and we still don't have that yet.
And I get what he's saying because every year is a different team. This is certainly the most different team he has just because they brought in so many new players from the transfer portal and the high school recruiting that this is a new team. And I get what he means by learning lessons, but we are 20 games into this season now. You are the back half of this season. Like, it is time to, you should not have to be learning lessons at this point in the year. And I don't know what lessons you exactly learned from a game like this. You should have been learning lessons after the Arkansas game when you got your doors blown off. It seemed like you did because you played a lot better in the Auburn game and the Oklahoma game. And then it's right back down to earth in this game where you're just getting clobbered by a team. And I think the problem for South Carolina is, Tyler, I look at this game, their front court play, it's not a secret at this point, but their front court play is terrible. I mean, it's just not consistent enough. Elijah Strong's your best guy, but he did nothing in this game. And then you look at Simeon and Walker. I mentioned them before, but your front court really only combined for like 9 points in this game. That is just not enough when you're trying to out rebound a team. You lost the rebound battle pretty significantly. So, look, you can take lessons from this game and whatnot, but we're continuing to see South Carolina just not being able to put it together. And that's a problem now in year number 4.
On the flip side of things, women's basketball coming off of their loss to Oklahoma the other day, you always wonder how they're going to bounce back. And I don't care if it's the number 1 team in the country. I don't care if it's the worst team in the country. You probably don't want to see Dawn Staley's team coming off of any kind of loss. And that's the buzzsaw that Vanderbilt ran into yesterday over at Colonial Life Arena, as the previously unbeaten in conference play Commodores came in as the number 5 team in the country. They didn't look like it because Carolina obliterated them 103-74, blowing off some steam from what happened the other day against Oklahoma, it seemed like.
Totally. I mean, this was probably one of their best games of the year for sure. Shot 61% from the field, 58% from 3-point range. And let's be fair to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt still shot very well in this game. 45% and 48% are pretty good lines to have from the 2-point and 3-point range. However, you're going to get beat by a team that is shooting nearly 60% just in general from everywhere on the floor. And this was a really good game. They got a lot of good effort from the starting lineup. I thought Medina Okot played a lot better in this game after her performance at Oklahoma. 8 of 9 from the field coming off the bench. So I think she played much better in this game. And look, you don't want to play South Carolina when they're pissed off. And that's exactly what we saw in this game. And just really, really good overall. The turnovers were minimized. You're really good at the free throw line, just shooting really well. I mean, it was a perfect recipe for putting up 100 points in this game and winning nearly by 30.
Well, and as you mentioned, Medina Okot, coming off the bench in this one, as Agot McKeer was inserted into lineups, you kind of played with a little bit more of a smaller lineup, played a lot faster. And the biggest thing compared to what happened the other night against Oklahoma, 27 of 36 at the rim. Those were the shots that were not falling the other day against the Sooners. Certainly falling yesterday against the Commodores. And again, everybody that you expect to have a good game had a good game tonight. Latson bounced back, had a really good performance with 21 points. Including being really good from the field. So it was just I don't want to say a palate cleanser because that is the number 5 team in the country, but it was good to see them back, get themselves back on track the way we know they're capable of doing.
Yeah. And now the thing moving forward is, look, you knocked off some steam. You're playing a lot better. Can you now do this every game moving forward? And we've seen South Carolina do this for the most part this season, but they had the game against Oklahoma that was pretty rough. I think you just got to carry this momentum moving forward, and you got some games to definitely do that throughout the rest of this month to really pick it up. But that was a good win nonetheless.
Speaking of blowing off steam, if you didn't see this because it happened on Friday, Dabo Swinney was blowing off some steam in a press conference where he went after Ole Miss and Pete Golding for some tampering, including saying some things like this.
And to be honest with you, this is crazy. To me, this situation is like having an affair on your honeymoon. That's basically what we're dealing with. And I know for a fact that this is happening at other places. Because you know why? Because I've had a bunch of coaches over the last week that have reached out to me. And they're going, well, let me tell you what's happened to me. Let me tell you what I know. Let me tell you my story. I've had a lot of people reach out with their stories. And so I want to challenge all of those coaches that have reached out to me. I want to challenge all of them. You need to step up and call it out. Otherwise, don't complain. You either step up and you be an example to young coaches in this profession and be people of integrity, or just shut your mouth and don't complain again. That's what I would say to all the coaches out there, because I know this has happened, and we're never going to get this under control until we start having some consequences. We're just not. It's just that simple.
Dabo Swinney certainly fired up in reference to what's been going on with Luke Ferrelli, who is now a member of the Ole Miss Rebels. We're going to discuss all of this coming up next with Chapel Fowler from the State newspaper as the extra point rolls along. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry on your Monday on the Game. Tyrett here for our friends over at Twin Peaks. We are in the middle of so many great sports going on. Football's coming down to its championships. College basketball is heating up. Pro basketball in the midst of their seasonal hockey. Baseball's only a couple weeks away, and there's only one place to take in all this amazing action, and that's with our friends over at Twin Peaks. TVs as far as the eye can see, a full menu of delicious food, whether you want burgers, wings, fries, whatever, they've got you covered. And of course, don't forget about those 29-degree draft beers, whether it's tonight, whether it's this weekend, whether it's a month from now, Twin Peaks has got you covered on all fronts. Get down there and take in all that great sports action, delicious food, and beverages as well at Twin Peaks. Eat streaks and scenic views. All right, welcome back in. Extra Point, Tyler Head and Jack Belcher along with you here on your Monday on the Game. We just played you a little snippet of Dabo Sweeney's rant from Friday at his press conference in reference to tampering and everything that went down with Luke Farrelly, who is now at Ole Miss. If you have about 8.5 minutes, I fully recommend going and watching the entire clip because he really goes into a lot of detail and really leaves no stone unturned. But somebody that was in the room to witness that is our friend Chapel Fowler from the state newspaper, who's joining us on the AAA Heat and Air phone lines. Chapel, appreciate you taking your time, man. How we doing today?
I'm good, guys. I have to ask, was that Sicko Mode Travis Scott on the intro music?
Believe it was.
Pretty good, if so. Got me all revved up. Yeah, ready to go.
That's what we do here. We got to get you fired up and ready to go, just like Dabo was on Friday. And you're in all these press conferences for him, and we know he's very passionate about these kind of things. Did you expect the level of detail that he went into of names and text message times and amounts? He really, like I said, left no stone unturned.
He did not. This was up there with the most memorable Dabo media availabilities of all time. The best press conference I've seen since I've been covering him. His radio show with the Tyler from Spartanburg ran is up there too. But in terms of when we were in the room with him, it's the best one. Excuse me. I think everybody who walked in there knew that they were going to talk Luke Farrelly and Ole Miss and tampering. But to what level, I personally wasn't sure. I don't think anybody else was either. I did not go in there expecting him to read line by line with timestamps on all these messages and phone calls. It was kind of like he'd done like a FOIA request or something. He was reading up about 8 pages of notes there. So I walked in ready for some fireworks, but not the level that we got. But I'm certainly glad that we got that, because that made for a fun press conference. And I mean, it's why I'm talking to you guys now. So.
Chapel, it's Jack. What's the most surprising part about how this all played out? I mean, it seemed like Farrelly was enrolled in classes at Clemson. Did he officially signed? Did he not?
Yeah, so that's one key point to it, and they kind of downplayed this in the presser. So he had signed his financial aid agreement, which kind of triggers, okay, now you're on scholarship, now you're out of the portal. So once that happened, that's kind of like the baseline of their argument. Like, it is tampering because he had signed a scholarship agreement. What he had not signed was a rev sharing agreement. So that was something that Larry at Tiger Illustrated had reported, and something Dabo kind of acknowledged himself when he said that they had only verbally agreed, was the phrase he used, verbally agreed to a contract offer. So, that's all of his actual earnings and stuff. But he was signed as a scholarship player. He was enrolled. He had a university email address. He had a sociology major. He was in the directory. He was doing workouts. He was obviously in that 8 a.m. class when Pete Golding texted him. So he was, 99% there. And I don't think it's particularly unique for some of these rev sharing deals to maybe get verbally agreed upon, and then they don't get fully hammered out with every single little line and bonus and detail till later. And obviously Clemson didn't have any reason to worry there up until late last week. So yeah, he was about as close to being totally locked in and part of Clemson this spring semester as he could be before he left.
Again, Chapel Fowler, the state newspaper, joining us on the AAA Heat and Air phone lines. And there's been a lot of tampering that's gone on in this portal era. But again, Dabo's kind of taken it a step forward in terms of exposing as much he can possibly expose in a public setting like he did on Friday. Now comes the question of, okay, what exactly is going to happen to Ole Miss? I know the NCAA put out their statement of we're going to look into it and all this kind of stuff, but we've seen them give slap on the wrist or very minimal punishments to these schools. And I wonder that if a situation like this, and Dabo being so open about it from a very specific standpoint, can't force real change, I don't know if we're ever going to get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it feels like an inflection point, obviously, for coaches who are now, maybe there's more confidence and willingness to come forward because you've got one of the more prominent coaches in the sport doing it. And I think a big part of it is the fact that Dabo's in a very privileged position here. Like, he makes a lot of money. He's secured his job. He's well known. So it's a lot easier for him to go out there and call out somebody by name as opposed to, I don't know, the coach at Marshall or something. But now kind of the ball is in the NCAA's court. Here's a very direct example, and Clemson has said they'll comply with everything investigation-wise the NCAA needs. I'm sure all these documents and texts and stuff that they were referencing to us in the media, they've already turned over to the NCAA, or they will soon. So you've got all this right in front of you. It seems pretty clear-cut that by the rules that you set up, this feels like something that's against those rules. So what do? Do you slap on the wrist? Do you do more than that? And I think kind of how this goes down for Ole Miss is probably going to, I don't know. I mean, the NCAA is kind of lost some of its power over the years, and maybe it doesn't exist in its current form in a while. But as of right now, it's still like the governing apparatus. They're the ones who make the rules and get people in trouble. So how hard do you want to come down on this when it's right there in front of you? I think that's a big question, and I don't really know. It feels really important and big and crazy when you're in there listening to it, but how does that really stack up on the NCAA's list of priorities? Do they really want to make an example of Ole Miss? Do they just want to slap on the wrist, like you said? I think the next few months will be interesting on that front too.
I know Dabo kind of talked in the press conference, not really faulting Ferrelli in this case, but more so blaming the adults in this situation, basically meaning Pete Golding and Ole Miss for originally, what was it, a $1 million offer, then they come back with $2 million. And that can be tough for a guy like Ferrelli in his position to turn down. So I'll kind of ask you for your opinion on this. I mean, where do you stand on how this whole situation played out? Like, are you one that is just kind of like blaming like Ole Miss for being in the wrong in this situation, or do you fault Ferrelli at all for taking the money and leaving? I mean, how do you kind of look at this whole situation and how it played out, Chappell?
Yeah, I point to the adults, and I thought that was a good thing that Clemson did to not drag the kid's name through the mud. Listen, like, if I was 19, 20 years old, whatever Luke Ferrelli is, and you're presented with life-changing money like that, which, you assume if Ole Miss is offering him $1 million contract, that's more than whatever Clemson was paying him, which we don't know, but I'm sure Ole Miss's initial offer was already pretty large, and then that gets doubled, and you're in a spot where you know that you can probably take that. You haven't signed your rev sharing deal. And I don't know, maybe that sets up his family that needs the money for success and stability for years to come. So I don't think you can fault a kid for taking advantage of all that stuff, because, again, the system is set up to incentivize and allow sort of this unlimited free agency up to the point of the portal ending. I mean, you saw that with Darian Mensah and the Duke Miami situation, and Cooper Barkate, one of his best receivers, also, within the last few hours of that portal window, saying, oh, actually, I'm going to enter the portal. And then, you kind of realize there's a last-minute offer being put out there. That happened all over college football. It wasn't just Clemson and Ole Miss that were in that situation. But I think it's definitely, if you want to point to one person and say, I'm upset at you, this is your fault, I think you either do it to Ole Miss or, again, just that everybody in the NCAA and coaches and admins, everybody who's agreed to these certain rules, and here's the way it's going, and we haven't really punished anybody that's gone against it. So I mean, I don't know. I'm sure. I mean, Ferrelli could have said no, right? He could have said no. He could have avoided this whole situation. But I think I thought Dabo struck the right tone with that in the presser. I know a lot of fans are really ticked off, Clemson fans, at Ferrelli, and I understand that. But I think if you're going to point your anger towards somebody, it probably should be more at the adults that put the system in place versus the kid who had a crazy contract offer right there and couldn't resist it. And if I was in his shoes, I probably would have done the same thing, honestly.
About 60 more seconds here. Where does this leave Clemson at the linebacker spot now? Again, Ferrelli was a hot name coming out of the portal and certainly commanded a lot of money in the process. But where do they look now, or what does that room look like now that he's gone?
Yeah, it's a massive loss. He was their best portal player by a mile, if you ask me, in terms of guys that they brought in. He was going to immediately start next to Sammy Brown, and they were going to be set there. They were going to take one linebacker. They found their guy. They were locked in, and now they don't have that. So there are some decent depth options on that roster: Jeremiah Alexander, Kobe McLeod, but nobody is going to come close to Ferrelli. So I know they're bringing in like a Penn walk-on guy for a preferred walk-on spot later this week, a transfer from the Ivy League. But that's going to be one of the larger holes on their roster now, heading into 26, definitely, because they lost out on the guy that was going to fill that spot left behind by Wade Woodhouse. So they're not in trouble there, but that's going to be a tough position to kind of smooth over next to Sammy Brown starting this season.
Chappell, man, good stuff as always. We appreciate it, and who knows, maybe we'll get some more entertaining Dabo rants in this offseason to help us through the next couple months.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Again, Chappell Fallow there of the State Newspaper. We'll come back, talk a little bit more about Dabo and what situations like this may ultimately lead to with him up there in the upstate. It is the Extra Points Outerhead and Jack Beltry along with you on your Monday here on The Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Feltry wrapping up hour number one. Again, appreciate Chapel Fowler of the State Newspaper joining us there to give us the in-person account of what happened for Dabo's rant on Friday. But this is interesting, and going back to the point that both you guys made a moment ago, you don't really blame Luke Ferrelli in this situation. He's just a product of the game, right? And by all accounts, from what Dabo went through with text messages and stuff, Ferrelli really wanted to stay, right? He's like, hey, he was telling Clemson what Ole Miss was trying to do. But then when they dangle a carrot of $2 million in front of him, like, that's hard to say no to, man. As a 18, 19-year-old kid, no matter how headstrong you might be, when somebody's dangling that much more money at you, it's really hard to say no. Again, this goes back to Ole Miss and them doing whatever they felt like they could to try and pry him away. And again, we'll see if the NCAA actually does something about this or not. Again, it seems like a big inflection point, as Chapel Fowler pointed out, of things changing going forward if something truly does happen here.
The other thing we didn't mention about Ferrelli leaving for Ole Miss is the fact that in those messages that Dabo
Yeah, sorry, Jack's having some technical problems here, but you know, as Dabo pointed out, there's so many specifics in those messages and stuff like that of what went down with these conversations. And again, if you have about 8.5 minutes, I fully recommend going and watching the entire thing because it's pretty captivating. And one question that this begs for me coming away from it, we talk so much about a lot of coaches that just kind of get fed up with what's going on in college football now, and some of them just end up stop coaching. Some of them go to the NFL, like we saw with Jeff Hafley a couple years ago. For a guy like Dabo, who's been very old school, right? Finally embraces the portal, finally does the thing that people, including us, have been critical of him not doing in terms of keeping up with the modern trends of college football, is willing to spend the money on a linebacker from Cal, does everything right, and another school just pries it out of his fingers. Like, if we're not getting close to Dabo just throwing his hands up and walking away, I'd be very surprised.
I think this was a big I think Dabo's going to be at Clemson for as long as he wants to be, but
As he should be. They shouldn't fire him. He can be there.
No. Unless things went completely off the rails, like Clemson had like a 2-10 season or something, then you could justify Clemson moving on from him. But I think if we're ever going to see Dabo leave, I think it's because of what's going on in college football and just how messed up and crazy it is. Like, you can't really blame him in this situation because Dabo didn't do anything wrong. He went out and used the transfer portal, got a really good linebacker, and ultimately he got screwed over in the end by a really sleazy type of move by Ole Miss here. So I just think it sucks what happened, and like Chappell said, it was a big loss at the linebacker position, but look, you got Sammy Brown coming back. Hopefully Clemson's able to fill that gap because it's a tough spot to be in. And I think any team in Dabo's shoes would feel the exact same way because it's a real messed up situation what happened. But that's the thing. There's no rules. There's no barriers set by the NCAA. And that's the problem here is that we can blame Ole Miss. We can blame the kid Ferrelli, but ultimately, at the end of the day, the NCAA also deserves a little bit of blame for this with just there's no regulations in place to handle these sorts of things.
You know, Dabo had that quote when NIL was getting close to happening 5-6 years ago when he said, if these kids start getting paid, then maybe I'll go do someone else. I think a lot of us took that as, well, Dabo just doesn't want the student athletes to make money. But I think it's more of a case now, especially as time's gone on and we've seen how things have happened. He was not, he was anticipating what this was going to do to the sport, to college sports. And well, in that sense, he was right in a lot of ways because it's just become this Wild West, right? And look, Ole Miss knows there's no regulations, knows that they can't really be stopped from doing this. So they feel like they can grab a linebacker that can help them win games and possibly a national championship. They're going to go to whatever lengths they have to make that happen. And that's the situation here. Now, if the NCAA comes in and drops the hammer, maybe that changes things, but I'm not really anticipating that's going to happen.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, this is going to be the case scenario until we see the NCAA take this whole thing a little bit more seriously. And it should be taken seriously right now just because this should not be happening. Like, A guy is signed and committed to Clemson. He's enrolled in school. That should do it. And I get it. He wasn't signed with the rev share or whatever, but it's just it's frustrating because it's like this should not. This is setting a very bad precedent that teams can go out there and do whatever they want basically, and there's no consequences or repercussions because of it.
Yeah. Again, it's the reality we've lived with for a while. I don't know if the NCAA is waiting on Congress or what the deal is, but it's gotten very messy very fast. And again, for a guy like Dabo, who again seems to be doing everything right, finally embracing the portal and NIL and all that kind of stuff, just to have it ripped out of his hands, I know that's got to frustrate him. He's not somebody that cusses, but I imagine under his breath and behind the scenes, he said a lot of swear words in the past couple of days that, again, publicly he's not going to state, but in his mind, probably going crazy.
Yeah, but that was a great 8.5 minute rant. Watching him just tear the whole thing to shreds. I mean, rightfully so. If there's any coach that probably has the right to do that and has earned that opportunity, it's probably Dabo. So can't blame him one bit.
Speaking of the portal, there's one particular name for South Carolina that's getting a lot of praise early in this offseason. We'll discuss that coming up next as we start hour number 2. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri on your Monday here on The Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Feltry along with you here on your Monday, entering hour number 2. And of course, we were talking about the transfer portal and some of the negatives of it with what's gone on in the upstate with Clemson and Luke Farrelly now joining Ole Miss and all that. I guess now, Jack, because here's the thing, we just kind of assumed these past couple of years, once you got somebody on campus, once they had signed their NIL deal, once they were taking classes, okay, you're good until the next portal cycle opens. That guy is a member of your team. But now we're obviously seeing that is not necessarily the case as we saw with Ole Miss. So I guess technically speaking, as we continue to talk about these transfers over the course of the offseason, they can be snatched at any time. And hopefully none of them do from South Carolina. Obviously, if they're the biggest name Carolina got out of the portal was Jacarius Peak, the left tackle from NC State, who, when we talked last week about Clark Brooks's article on 3 of the top 100 just players in general going in to the 2026 college football season, he landed inside of the top 15, having not played a snap here at South Carolina. But that goes along with the expectation of how big of an impact we expect him to make this upcoming season. And in addition to what you had the other day with, Clark Brooks' article, of course, formerly known as SEC StatCat to a lot of you out there, we also had the article over the weekend from Pete Nako's Portal Pete, as we like to call him, that discussed, the most impactful transfers overall in college football, which Peak's name got Peak's name appeared on that list as well. And Jack, as I was just mentioning there, we're seeing Peak's name appear on all these lists of best overall players going into the upcoming season, top 15 in Clark Brooks' rankings the other day. And now he's being featured by Pete Nako's Portal Pete as one of the most impactful transfers in all of college football. The expectations for what he's going to bring to South Carolina's offensive line, particularly at that left tackle spot, are, I'd say, pretty sky high right now. All right, still having some technical problems there with Jack, so we'll work to get that straightened out here in a second. But getting back to the conversation about, Jacarius Pete, I'll just go ahead and read real quick what exactly Pete Nako said about him in his article, again, of the most impactful transfers of this, portal cycle so far. He said the South Carolina offensive line issues were well documented in 2025, with quarterback Lenore Sellers sacked 42 times. Shane Beamer's program worked to revamp the offensive line in the portal, landing a key piece in NC State offensive tackle Jacarius Peak, 6'4", 298-pound offensive tackle, has played 2,200 career snaps and allowed 3 sacks in 2025. So again, Jack, Jacarius Peak checks all the boxes of what you want for a left tackle, and hopefully he can make that significant of an impact to help this offensive line be better in 2026.
Yeah, like I was saying before, again, apologies for my internet issues on my end here with the weather and whatnot. But yeah, this is a guy that's going to be a day one impact player. Regardless of where he starts in the offensive line, it'll probably be the left tackle position. He's a guy that you know what you're going to get from him, a guy that started a lot of games, has been really good. Like, he's going to be your best offensive lineman in 2026 heading into the season. Now, how he plays in the SEC, we'll find out. But right now on paper, he's your best guy. And then you wonder from there, how does the rest of your offensive line shake out? Because you're losing a lot of guys that started last season. You got to replace a lot of starters on this offensive line. So I think we know for sure Peak's going to be a starter on this line at the tackle spot. Now it's just, okay, how does the rest of the line shake out for the Gamecocks?
And Jack, you're an offensive lineman by trade. Did you ever play the left tackle spot at any point?
Yeah, I believe I started at left tackle during my junior season, maybe, but again, that was JV. So, I mean, that was different. But yeah, look, I played left tackle, guard. Like, I think it's a lot easier to play both spots for sure. Like, I played guard a lot growing up, and then moved to tackle in high school a little bit. I would say, though, for a guy like Peak, like, he's going to be playing tackle. Like, there's no doubt about it. Now, the question is, for a guy like Josiah Thompson, for instance, if he doesn't start at the left tackle spot because Peak's there, Does he just naturally move to right tackle, or can he play guard? I mean, these are questions that are going to have to be answered here during spring ball and during fall camp. But I think having versatility on the offensive line is something that you really need.
Well, I mean, just on a proven production standpoint, Ja'Carrius Peak is obviously leaps and bounds ahead of where Josiah Thompson was. So, if anything, I feel like Josiah Thompson is going to be in competition for that right tackle spot. Again, nothing's guaranteed for anybody on this offensive line, but I'd be very surprised if Josiah Thompson were able to beat out Ja'Carrius Peak for that left tackle spot. And again, we talk so much about left tackle and its importance because quite literally, it's in the top 3 of most important positions on the football field. And some people may even make the argument that it's number 1. You're protecting the quarterback's blind side. Obviously, you're going to be dealing with a lot of really great edge rushers, particularly in the SEC. So if you don't have that spot figured out, then the rest of your offensive line is going to suffer. And I went back and looked of all the teams that made the college football playoff this past year. And again, I get it. Pro Football Focus grades aren't the end all be all, and we shouldn't take it completely as religion, but it is a good bar for where guys stand in terms of overall pass block ratings and stuff like that. Compared to all the teams in this year's college football playoff, Ja'Carrius Peak as a left tackle would have been the 5th rated out of all 12, 13 when you're counting him, left tackles in the college football playoff. So he plays at a level, at least from that one spot, that's good enough to be in the tournament that everybody's trying to get to towards the end of the year. And if he can come in here and add that same kind of impact, I truly think it can resonate across the rest of the line.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he's definitely a guy that if everything that we've heard about him and seen from him translates to the SEC at South Carolina, he's going to be a huge upgrade on the offensive line. Like he was the number 1 offensive tackle for a reason from the transfer portal that you brought in. So you know what you're getting with him. Again, though, as I alluded to before, he's one guy. You got to have consistency across the line. And one thing I'm interested in learning this offseason here as we get heading into the 26th season is they have so many new pieces on this line. All right, they revamped that entire room, new coach, basically an entirely new group of players to work with, aside from a few that are coming back. I mean, how does that look? How does that chemistry kind of translate over to the field? Because I mean, you can be big and strong and all that, but you got to have cohesiveness on the offensive line. And what we saw last year was surely not that. I mean, this team struggled with the noise in stadiums, even in their home stadium. I remember them talking about how it was so loud at the SC State game, and they had trouble hearing. Like, you would hope they get all that figured out this year, just because it's a clean slate, new group of linemen, and hopefully they can better protect Lenoris in the backfield.
And that's a group that, while there's a lot of optimism for the changes that you made by bringing in Coach Clem and basically overhauling that entire room, I myself am going to spend a lot of this offseason, or really through the first couple weeks of the season, still unsure, still sitting on pins and needles. And it won't be until you play Mississippi State in week 3, your first SEC game, that we truly understand what this offensive line can be and can be capable of. Because again, we're going to go through the next 8 to 9 months. We may not even have a spring game, so you won't even have that to go out there and see. And every bit of information that we get is going to be from people on the inside at practice and stuff like that. So the spin is obviously going to be very positive, but I think with the reputation this offensive line's had in the Beamer tenure, we're all going to be in wait and see mode. Like, all right, it sounds good. You're telling me it's good, but you've also been saying that the past couple of years. I need to see it against high-level competition to truly believe. And that may take a couple weeks before, you may have to play the Alabamas and stuff like that and have a really good performance against them and what they're going to bring as a pass rush to truly believe, like, okay, I think this offensive line legitimately is better.
Agreed. No, you're 100% right on that. It should be wait and see, just because it's like college football doesn't have the benefit of playing games against outside competition leading up to the season. So we really don't get a true look at what this group is until the season begins. And it doesn't just go for the offensive line. It goes for just about the entire team in general and how they're going to look this season. But again, we'll get to see them in spring practice. Hopefully, there's a spring game to really get some sort of measurement on how things look going up against what should be a pretty good defensive line for South Carolina. So that should help this offensive line out going up against a group like that every single day. But you're right, we will not really know for sure what this group truly is until the season gets going and you get into week 4 or 5 and you're going to Tuscaloosa and you're playing an Alabama team that will have, I'm sure, NFL guys all over the place.
Yeah, and, again, you mentioned that cohesiveness and how important that is for a group like the offensive line that does essentially have to move as one. And again, there's a very realistic chance you could have 5 brand new starting offensive linemen this upcoming year. Maybe Shed Surratt, and we'll see about Josiah Thompson, but it could look entirely new. So how does that chemistry work in the offseason? And again, once you start playing games, how do those guys function as well? And then knock on wood, because I feel like I have to do that every time I talk about this. Hopefully you don't deal with injuries, because we learned the hard way a couple years ago, when you're mixing your offensive line every single week, mainly due to injuries, you're not going to be very successful. Again, a lot of these guys come in with at least a good to decent pedigree of what they've done in their college careers so far. Ja'Carrius Beak being the best among those. You just hope everybody stays healthy and they can individually be, or as a unit, be what those guys are individually, which for the most part is pretty good.
That's what you're hoping. And the other thing that I don't really think we've talked about too much is just the amount of experience that they brought in on this offensive line of guys that have started. It doesn't matter where they've come from. I like them taking the Indiana approach to this of bringing guys that they may not be all 5 stars like Ja'Carrius Peak of high rated 4-star, 5-star players, but they got experience starting at other schools. And so hopefully that is something that does help South Carolina, but also they got to stay healthy. That is something that definitely hurt this group last year and in 2023. 24, I think they stayed pretty healthy, if I'm remembering correctly, but I think you definitely need that factor of the same 5 starting pretty much every week, and hopefully it's your best 5 and giving you good production.
Do we know when they're going to do that, like meet and greet with all the new transfer portal guys? That should be coming up here soon, right?
Yeah, it's not. It's probably like again, don't quote me on this, but it's probably like late February, early March. Like it's definitely later. It's definitely into baseball season. Like I do know that. So
Okay.
it'll be coming up here probably in a few weeks if they continue that tradition they've done for the last few years.
Because again, you don't have a spring portal cycle, and I don't think they did it that late anyway. So what you have, again, assuming nobody comes in and does a Luke Ferrelli on you, what you have is what you have, and it's not really going to change really anymore in the off season. So yeah, I'm interested to hear from some of these guys and learn a little bit more about them from just a personality standpoint. And again, hopefully all these changes that you made end up netting success this upcoming year.
Yeah, that's obviously the goal. I mean, it has to have more success this season just because last year was not good enough. And you go ahead and just regroup and replenish in the portal, and hopefully it'll lead to better results.
Well, lots changing in the world of college football, including how the uniforms are going to look going forward. We'll discuss that coming up next, as well as some new additions to the college coaching ranks as well from the NFL. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry with you on your Monday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltry along with you here on your Monday on the game. You know, Jack, on Friday, it was while we were on the air that we, again, I don't know if you want to call it breaking news or not because we kind of knew it was going to happen, but we did formally get the news that the college football playoff is staying at 12 teams in 2026. Again, they'll have another deadline in December to decide what 27 beyond is going to be. But for the time being, it'll be the third year in a row that we have the 12-team playoff. What we didn't get into as much on Friday was the small nuance differences between the playoff, once again having tweaks for its third iteration. One of those being that all four power conference champions are going to qualify no matter what your ranking is. So, and if that had been true this year, Duke would have gotten in even at winning the championship 8-5, but 7-5 in the regular season. And Notre Dame, if they are ranked inside of the top 12, is now guaranteed a spot. So, despite Miami making its run to the national championship, would not have been possible if these rules have been in place this year.
And that's the problem. That's I hope we don't have another situation like that where Miami beats Notre Dame during the regular season. We could have it this year because Miami's got to go to Notre Dame in 2026, right, as of right now. I hope we don't get another situation like that where a team is, barely ranked ahead of Notre Dame. Always not getting in because Notre Dame's in the top 12. We got to put Notre Dame to me.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, and this is dangerous by doing this. I want to put faith in the committee by thinking if they really didn't want Notre Dame in, they just put them at 13th in a situation like this year. But that maybe I'm giving the committee too much credit at that point in time because again, Notre Dame was 11, so by this rule, they'd be guaranteed a spot. But maybe if again we kind of rewind the clock back to early December, maybe they just would have put them 13th instead. I don't know, but there is a way around that. If you're the committee, I just don't know if they're going to do that or not.
I don't know either. So that's a hypothetical, though. I mean, that could have changed how things went this year for sure if that rule were in place. Because I think head to head has to matter. It has to, and it did. It did in this case with Miami getting in over Notre Dame. But we'll see. Hopefully, we don't have to go down that same rabbit hole again of a team getting left out because it's Notre Dame. But we'll see. But that was interesting to see that in place. I don't mind the four conference champs being in the playoff. I think a Duke, even if it were Duke, like let's say Duke got in and they had to go play, who was it? Oregon. I think you get a better game than James Madison going to play or even Tulane. I think you got to just have the one group of five team in, hit that checkbox, let it be, and then get the ACC champ or whoever it is from the Power Four in as well, just so you can have I think it's just for a betterment of the game, honestly.
Other news we got going into the weekend on Friday was the NCAA officially approved sponsored jersey patches for college sports. Per the NCAA, teams will be permitted up to 2 additional commercial logos on their uniforms and apparel and 1 additional commercial logo on equipment during the preseason and regular season, and can have an additional logo for conference championships. All patches must be no longer than 4 square inches, and placement of sponsored logos will be legislated by a rules subcommittee for each sport. So essentially now, as we kind of expected to happen, when you're watching Carolina football this fall, more likely than not, there's going to be some kind of business, some kind of entity with its logo now on the essential front shoulder of the uniforms.
Whether you love it or hate it, this is the way that the game is going. And look, in the day and age where you need all the money you can get to build the best roster possible and have all these stadium upgrades and whatnot, this is a nice resource to have of putting a sponsored logo on a jersey. Now, fans are going to be up in arms in it, I'm sure, especially if it doesn't look good. Like, you can get away with a jersey patch as long as it looks good. Like, I've seen this in baseball over the years now with MLB quickly starting to integrate jersey ad read patches on their uniforms, and some look good, some look terrible. That's the situation here. But I think if you can get it to look good, it's not as big of a deal in my opinion. Plus, at the end of the day, these companies are going to be paying millions and millions of dollars just to have their logo on the uniform.
Yeah, I think about that from a value standpoint, right? Because it's one thing like we have the Blanchard Cat stuff on the field now, and there's certainly a lot of value in terms of having a prominent place on a field of an SEC team, and all the teams in the league have pretty much followed suit with having those kind of things. But I think about how much valuable a jersey patch could be from a standpoint of jersey sales, pictures, videos of all the highlights throughout the entire season. You're always going to have that fixated logo on the uniforms. And I can't imagine what an Ohio State or an Alabama or a Texas can charge for those kind of things, given how high profile those programs are. And certainly at South Carolina, you can fetch a pretty penny for those as well. And again, when every dollar counts in this new era of college sports, you're going to take whatever you can get. And again, I'm not shocked at all by this because I think we all saw it coming down the pipe.
No, it's going to be good for teams to have that resource of money coming in. Like, for instance, in terms of money, just to get a ballpark idea of what it could look like for those big name schools. I mentioned before, MLB has been integrating the jersey sponsorship patches for a few years now. When the Yankees, that's my favorite team in baseball, had Star Insurance become their sponsor on the jerseys, Star Insurance paying the Yankees $25 million a year. So, again, it's the Yankees, but keep in mind, think about just how much a big name team, even in South Carolina, think about how much a team could fetch for just having a sponsored logo on the jersey. I mean, it's going to bring in so much money, and however it's used, it'll definitely be for the better, I would think.
Well, and again, we'll get some estimates and number figures as time goes on for these kind of things. But if you were able to fetch, let's just say, $5 million, right, for the entire football season to have this company's logo featured on the uniforms, that is already a quarter of your rev share budget. So you've already taken care of that part. If you can get $1 million or so for men's basketball and maybe something close to that for women's basketball, you're getting a lot of that heavy lifting done. I don't want to say easily, but kind of out of the way, and then figuring out where the rest comes from. I don't think you're going to be able to cover the entire rev share cost with just these jersey patches, but I don't know. Maybe they can come pretty close with it. But again, it's just kind of that next step in evolution of being able to monetize things in college sports. And we've got the 25-yard line. We've got jersey patches. I guess the question is, what's next?
I would imagine, you said they could put, 2 patches on their jerseys, right?
That's what it says.
Yeah. I'd wonder helmet decals, like on the back of the helmets, maybe. Because again, you're seeing, like, you're trying to get it to where you see this stuff during the game. Hence why you have the the Under Armour logos front and center on the jersey, or in this case, would be the jersey patches for the ads. Like, you can definitely make a lot of money on here. And again, even if it's $5 million, if it's $5 million per sponsored patch on the jersey, that's $10 million right there, and that's half your budget with rev share of what you can be having. So I think this is going to be a nice resource to have for those schools that just don't have as big of funds as these other programs out there.
I think as well, you could see things like the green space outside of the painted lines, maybe sell that a little bit. I know there are some schools like Oregon has got some advertisements in their out of bounds area. That could be something that's coming next. We talk about jersey patches. Why not sell the rights to the coaching shirts and jackets and stuff like that, where you can have one sponsor on the team uniforms, and then when they show Shane Bieber on the sidelines, he's got a whole another sponsor on his, polo or jacket or whatever the coach is wearing. Like, it may sound crazy, but like, these are probably legitimate conversations happening about, hey, how can we maximize this and get as many different companies and entities involved to help us out with the money that we're going to need every single year.
At some point, we're going to get to a point where it's just not even the team's logo anymore. It's the team's logo with the other logo mixed in somehow of a company or something. It's crazy.
At some point, you brought up helmet decals. Somebody's going to sell that space, if they're allowed to, on the side of the helmet to the highest bidder. That's coming. I don't know who it's going to be, but somebody's going to do it.
Yeah, and that would be a lot of money, I'm sure, because you could see that helmet from every angle on TV. So,
or do you like incorporate the sponsor into the helmet somehow? Like, I don't know if you're gonna have
That's more so what I was thinking.
yeah, if Firehouse Subs is gonna sponsor you, do you have your mascot eating a Firehouse Subs on your helmet?
That would be pretty good. That
Yeah.
would be pretty clean, to be
Hey,
honest.
at this point, there's no bad ideas, right?
No, there's not. And in this world of needing to make money, this is certainly an idea.
Speaking of ideas, some NFL teams have made some interesting coaching hires over the past couple days. We'll dive into those coming up next, as well as one NFL coordinator that's coming to college. We'll discuss that as the extra point rolls along. It's our Ed and Jack Feltree with you on your Monday on the game.
It says it's 39.
Oh, jeez.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher along with you here on your Monday on the game. We'll get into what's going on in the NFL when it comes to coaching movement in just a second. But first, it is time for Who Sprung a Leak, brought to you by our friends over at American Leak Protection. Jack, did you happen to see what happened out in Como with Oklahoma and Missouri over the weekend?
Did not. What did I miss?
So Oklahoma, and again, we saw them last week. That's a program that's struggling. They're not in good shape right now. One of the worst teams in the SEC, but they had an opportunity to knock off a really good Missouri team over the weekend, leading in the final seconds of regulation, up 81-78 with 5 seconds to go after making a couple free throws. Trent Pierce of Missouri, though, goes down and hits a 37-foot jumper to tie the game going into overtime. So one buzzer beater sends the game into overtime. Then Oklahoma up by 2 as the final seconds of overtime are dripping away. Mark Mitchell hits another buzzer-beating three-pointer to win the game. Oklahoma suffered 2 buzzer beaters in one game on Saturday and now are 1-6 in conference play. For Who Sprung a Leak, brought to you by our friends over at American Leak Protection.
Yeah, Oklahoma's down bad right now. They keep in mind they won their SEC opener over Ole Miss, but since then they've lost 6 straight. So that looks like not a great win for South Carolina as long as Oklahoma keeps losing. But yeah, who would have thought that a guy would they had 2 buzzer beaters in the same game? That's crazy.
Yeah, can't say I've seen that one, at least not in a while. As we get back to the NFL again over the weekend, the Patriots and the Seahawks punched their ticket to Super Bowl 60. They'll be having a rematch from their game. I guess that'd be Super Bowl 49. Yeah, 49.
Yeah, 49, because it was the year before the one in Santa Clara.
So 11 years ago, those 2 teams played, and to my knowledge, there's not a single person from either one of those teams still on those active rosters. So it's a fresh matchup, despite the fact that we've seen these 2 pro organizations face off against each other in the Super Bowl. And you know, if Mike McDaniel gets in a situation where he's down at the 1-yard line, just hand it off to Kenneth Walker. Just let history tell you not to throw it there.
Yeah, definitely need to take some lessons from Pete Carroll and that crazy Super Bowl. That was one of the better Super Bowls in recent memory, and hopefully it'll be another good one here. As much as I don't like seeing the Patriots back in the Super Bowl as a Bills fan, I can't help but hope for a really good game here.
Well, as far as those 2 teams go, obviously they're going to be fighting for the number 1 or for the crown for this season, and they will pick 31st and 32nd coming up in the NFL draft. But a lot of teams making their hires for their future. And the headliner over the weekend on Saturday, the Steelers are hiring Mike McCarthy to replace Mike Tomlin. And this has been met with mixed reviews from a lot of different places across the football world when this was announced over the weekend.
Yeah, I don't think this is the big hire that the Steelers needed to make. Like, this is who you fire. This is who you moved on from Mike Tomlin for. Mike McCarthy, the guy that, keep in mind, hasn't won a Super Bowl since 2010. Coincidentally, when he beat the Steelers in the Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers a decade and a half ago. That's the thing here, is McCarthy really any better than Tomlin? I think he's actually kind of worse than Tomlin because what he had in Dallas. I mean, the Cowboys were just not good enough under him, where they missed the playoffs, and then they, didn't really go on big playoff runs. I mean, this is, I think it's a safe hire, I guess, because you know what you're going to get with McCarthy. Like, I don't think you'll ever see a Mike McCarthy team just be downright awful, right? Where they're picking like top 5 of the NFL draft. Like, this is going to probably keep the Steelers where they're currently at, afloat, being right in the playoff mix every year. The problem is, if I'm the Steelers, I'm looking to hire a guy that is going to elevate the program and lead them to the next step, which is, the Steelers haven't won a playoff game in almost a decade. And that's not good. That's concerning. So you're trying to find the guy that gets them there, but is it Mike McCarthy? I don't know. And I'm going to be interested to see what this means for the quarterback position. Is Aaron Rodgers going to come back for another season to reunite with his former head coach from Green Bay? Are they going to draft a quarterback in this year's upcoming draft? Are they going to rock with a guy like Mason Rudolph or even Will Howard, who they drafted from Ohio State, to be the future at that position? Or did they sign someone? I don't know. They really need to figure out that quarterback position for sure, but I don't think this is a move that necessarily makes the Steelers better, is what I'm trying to get at.
I think it's also important to remember Mike Tomlin did step down. He was not fired, so this was not a case of the Steelers pushing him out the door and then hiring Mike McCarthy. I think it does create an interesting question of like, okay, if Tomlin doesn't walk away, do they fire him? I think we all kind of felt like yes, but this hire maybe suggests not necessarily. Also, you can make the point too that in terms of all the coaches available, especially after Harbaugh got taken up by the Giants, I really don't know any other coaching candidates you look at out there and say, wow, that guy's definitely leaps and bounds better than Mike Tomlin is. And again, like you said, the knock on McCarthy when he was in Green Bay was he couldn't get back to a Super Bowl despite having Aaron Rodgers having MVP seasons left and right, it felt like. And then when we got to Dallas, they would have great regular seasons, win 12, 13 games, and then do all of nothing in the playoffs. So, yeah, you're kind of in a similar boat with him. But the Steelers are not an organization that I feel like is willing to tear it all down and start over, right? And look, sometimes that's what it takes, but that is a multi-year process of trading away guys and really kind of getting your money right, in addition to maybe taking on a chance on an unproven coach, where I just don't think as an organization the Steelers are willing to do that. So they're going to go with the safer hire that can probably keep you around the same way, with the hope that maybe the change of scenery will get Mike McCarthy back to being at one of the top levels of coaches in the NFL and get them back to a Super Bowl.
And if that's the case, then we can eat our words on this. But I just think in a division that is normally really good, and I think we're at a point where the AFC North right now is just not as good as it once was, right? The Bengals are, if Joe Burrow stays healthy, maybe things were different this season, but he didn't stay healthy, and the Bengals really struggled. The Browns are the Browns, and then you have the Ravens, which just let go of Harbaugh, obviously, and have hired their coach, which we'll get into in a second. I mean, this was a real opportunity, I think, for the Steelers to make a splash hire, whether it's a young guy, hotshot coordinator, whoever, and they go with McCarthy. Like, I will eat my words if I'm wrong on that, but I just think there are better guys out there that maybe are unproven, and maybe that's the route the Steelers don't want to go down, but I think it would have been a good time to make that type of unproven guy hire.
And real quick, Arthur Smith, the former offensive coordinator for the Steelers the past couple of years, he's going back to college. He is going to be the offensive coordinator for the Ohio State Buckeyes. So now you're going to have Matt Patricia and Arthur Smith as the two respective coordinators under Ryan Smith going forward, Ryan Day going forward. I just think that's interesting, right? Neither one of those guys have a long tenure in college, especially Arthur Smith. He's pretty much been a lifer in the NFL, but Ryan Day's like, hey, NFL guys, I got a lot of talent here. Let's go.
Yeah, I think it's a good move for him to go to Ohio State. We've seen Chip Kelly have a lot of success going to Ohio State, and now he's in a good spot. Like, I think moving forward, this is a good move here for Arthur Smith to take that job, just because of the uncertainty. And who knows if McCarthy would have even brought him back with the Steelers.
Yeah. Last about 60 seconds here again, as you mentioned, the Ravens hire Jesse Minter's defensive coordinator. It'll be a wait and see type thing. They're probably hoping that he's, another Mike McDonald. They can come in and have success right away. We'll see. I would have thought they would go on offensive considering Lamar and everything, but they went defensive, and it's going to see what happens over time, I guess.
Yeah, their defense needs substantial improvement. They were just not good this season under Zach Orr, so you're hoping you see some defensive improvement there. I don't mind them doing that. They just got to get the right offensive coordinator in there to call plays and hopefully develop Lamar even further, because the Ravens, they have too much talent not to be better. That's the thing about them.
Speaking of the NFL, our headlines on Friday were NFL related. Did we get them right? We'll check that coming up next to wrap up the hour. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you here on your Monday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Velcher wrapping up the hour here on your Monday on the Game. Of course, we talked at the beginning of the show what happened over the course of the weekend, or particularly yesterday when it came to the NFL Conference Championships as the Patriots and Seahawks get set to face off in the Super Bowl. But did we get our headlines right on Friday when we projected ahead? And Jack, I'm happy to say that you were right on the money with your headline from Friday when you predicted that Sam Darnold and the Seattle Seahawks would overcome the Jet stigma and they would get to the Super Bowl. In fact, Darnold maybe had one of the games of his career last night, outdueling the potential MVP and Matt Stafford in the process. And yes, Sam Darnold is going to the Super Bowl in 2 weeks, a sentence we would not have believed a couple of years ago.
That's right. I mean, who would have thought that he would be the guy leading his team to the Super Bowl over guys like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, who have still not been able to get to the Super Bowl. I mean, this will be Sam's second Super Bowl, because we got to remember.
That's right.
I saw a graphic out there or a tweet or something. I forget who it was, but some that this was Sam's first Super Bowl when he went to the Super Bowl 49ers. So this is I was not expecting him to have this type of game yesterday, like game of his lifetime stuff.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point about him being on that San Francisco or that the team from a couple years ago, but I think he would much rather take this Super Bowl trip compared to that one, because it's a lot different when you're actually playing in the game as opposed to staying on the sidelines. But regardless, for a lot of us that really kind of wrote him off as a bust a couple years ago or his tenure with the Jets, I tweeted out the picture of the mononucleosis thing from a couple years ago. We had the clip about him seeing. He goes, like, he just seemed like a dude that was never going to amount to much in the league. And even last year with the deal with the Vikings, because he fell off so hard, not only in that last game of the regular season, but also his performance in the playoffs. Like, oh, there's old Sam Darnold again. We might just be able to say, hey, this guy's finally just becoming a good quarterback. It just took time and finding a place in an organization that wasn't a disaster to make that happen.
No, he's got great weapons around him. He's got a good run game, good receivers to throw to. Clint Kubiak, his offensive coordinator, is just electric right now, calling the right plays, and it's a good system for him. I think we see why things didn't work with the Jets and the Panthers, just organizations that at the time just did not really benefit him at all. And it's good to see Sam really blossom into the quarterback that I think the Jets and most people thought he was going to be coming out of college.
Well, Jack got his headline pretty spot on. Mine on Friday was that Puka Nacua would have about $150 and 2 touchdowns to lead the Rams to the Super Bowl once again. I actually was not far off on the stats. Nacua did have 165 and 1 touchdown, but not quite enough as the Rams come up short of making the Super Bowl this season. And a lesser talked about fourth down controversy compared to what happened with the Broncos was the Rams going for it late, when down 31-27. They could have kicked the field goal, made it 1 score. They end up throwing the ball to the back of the end zone, gets batted away. Seattle takes the ball back. They do give it back to the Rams again there at the very end of the game, where at that point, theoretically, they could have gone down for a field goal to win the game. But I'm not as mad about that one, because with the way Seattle was running on offense or performing on offense, if you're Sean McVay and the Rams, you don't know if you're ever going to see the ball again, right? So you have to almost treat that as your last possession. Could you call it a different play or something like that? Sure. But I'm not as mad about that one as I am about Sean Payton opting to not go for it early in the game to go up 10, or not kicking the field goal to go up 10.
So if you kick the field goal there, if you're the Rams, you'd be down 31-30 with about, I believe at the time it was just under the 5-minute mark. So you would have had plenty of time to get a stop, get the ball back. Now, as it turned out, you go for on fourth down, you don't get it, and the Seahawks nearly run out the clock until you get fortunate to have the ball back with 20 seconds left. And honestly, I was watching that game last night, and the Rams were moving down the field in 2 plays, and it's like, oh man, they're going to be in position here to throw a Hail Mary. But unfortunately, Nacua did not get out of bounds on that one catch. I thought he did get out of bounds. I'm like, wait, the game's over. Why is the clock running? He got out of bounds. But nah, man, he did not get down. So I don't think that situation is as egregious as the Sean Payton call, because it was at different points in the game. Like, that would have made it
Sure.
10-0 for the Broncos early in that game before the snow kicked in, and who knows how that game ends up going. But with the Seahawks Rams game, I really can't fault McVay for going for it, just because neither team defensively could really get a stop at that point.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I thought Nakua did get out of bounds. Watching it live, because you have the camera from the sideline. But when they showed that first replay, like, yeah, his knee was down well in bounds, and that's a tough way to end the season, and maybe a tough way to end Matthew Stafford's career. We don't know. Like, it's up in the air, and Sean McVay wouldn't comment one way or the other on what he thinks Matthew's going to do. But it's not unrealistic to think that Matthew Stafford could have thrown his last NFL pass, and it was that one to Nakua that didn't get out of bounds enough to stop the clock and attempt at least a Hail Mary to the end zone.
I don't know, man. He's accomplished everything he's needed to in his career. He's probably going to win the NFL MVP at age 37. My thing is, does he want to keep doing it? I mean, the guy obviously loves football. That's the thing. Does he feel like he has more to do? Is he mad about finishing this season the way they did? Can he feel like he can get back to the Super Bowl? There's a lot of things that he's got to figure out here in the offseason, but definitely if this is the end, it was a great season for him.
Yeah, we'll certainly see, again, those decisions to be made here in the coming weeks and stuff like that. But we do have a Super Bowl set, which we'll talk about plenty over the course of the next 2 weeks. Jack, hopefully stay safe out there, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow.
All right, that'll do it for the Extra Point. Coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here in the game.
What up?
Sorry, what was that? Oh, what's up? $11 on your Monday morning. Welcome in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West, Chris, along with you here, all in one piece, all warm. Everybody got power. We all good. We survived the weekend.
Everything's good. I think we were fortunate.
Yeah.
Not much. Had some wind, had some freezing rain.
You're a little bit more north of us.
Yeah.
So did you get it worse?
Well, I don't know. I don't know how bad it was here.
Really, not much.
Yeah,
of anything.
not much. Some wind. Had to go do some checking. Are we good on branches falling and all those things? Just some ice, really. I do think. I haven't gotten an answer if we can count whether or not we got any snow. There were a couple times I was outside and I'm like, this kind of looks like maybe a little snow. Maybe it's a wintry mix.
Yeah.
Like early in the day. We definitely, when it started like raining, it's like, this is freezing rain. There's no doubt.
Right. Yeah. I went outside once yesterday and there was the snow flakes mixed with rains.
Yeah.
I don't really count that.
Yeah.
There's
and it
ice
didn't
on the
stick.
car, but
Yeah.
when I look at the ground, it's not covered in white snow. Like, I wouldn't say it snowed here. What about you, Wes?
I saw a little bit in there. I saw some snow. But wintry mix is probably the most accurate way to say it. I think I was as prepared for a storm as I've maybe ever been, and then just not much happened on my end, guys. I mean, I was like, okay, this thing's gonna start at 8 p.m. on Saturday. Looking around, looking up. No, it's gonna be later on in the middle of the night. You go to bed, you're like, all right, we're gonna wake up and it's just gonna be icicles everywhere. And woke up, I was like, that's it. And then, they were like, well, there's going to be another line coming through this afternoon. This one could be bad. At my house, at least, just not much going on. The most I had was like, yes, the deck surface was frozen over. Front porch, the steps walking down were frozen over, which can be dangerous, obviously, if you're not paying attention to it. But we were very, very fortunate. Had power, had heat, all that stuff, man.
Yeah, I was as prepared as I could be. In fact, I was telling Jack earlier, my mom told me the way to make an alternative heat source with like a ceramic pot and a candle that you can apparently do.
No.
So I had that stuff ready in case I needed it, but thankfully I didn't.
Did y'all see that going around everywhere?
I was not aware of this, but apparently it's a thing.
Do we? I don't know if I buy it, but like it was definitely viral going into the weekend. Did you try it?
I didn't try it. I had the stuff ready in case I needed it, but I had not tried it. Now, out of curiosity, I may give it a shot just to see if it actually works. But yeah, I did. I guess it did go viral, and then maybe that's where my mom saw it. But I was not aware that that's something you could do until she told me.
I missed that one. Missed that one. We just had the typical, like, we've got flashlights, we've got water, we've got ice for the cooler,
a lot of blankets.
Yeah, blankets. Yeah. We're good. Y'all, speaking of the ice and the snow, I mean, the game in Denver.
Whew.
I mean, it was crazy looking. They showed that shot during the game. They're like, here's what it looked like in the first quarter. And then by the end, I mean, the Patriots ran that. What they were trying to hand the ball off,
Yeah, they both slipped.
And Drake May, like, he turns around to hand the ball off, and the running back's just on the ground. And then he's like, well, let me try to freelance. Oh, now I'm on the ground. And then by the end of the game, they're just like, nobody can score.
Yeah.
So they literally ran that third down play. They're like, just throw it away.
Yeah.
Just throw it away and punt. Nobody's trying to field it. I was like, is anybody going to attempt to field a punt? No. Just let it bounce.
Well, I think Denver only ran like one play in New England territory in the second half. So they weren't afraid that Jarrett Stidham was just going to lead him down the field on some kind of crazy drive at that point.
He's just like, I'm just going to throw it up. Yeah, let's see what happens. It's backyard football.
It is. At this point. And that goes back to the hot debate coming away from that game is when you had the opportunity to go up by 10 points early in the second quarter, knowing weather was going to be on the way, Sean Payton opts not to do that. And on that play, being a 4th and 1, they opt to roll Jarrett Stidham out instead of just running a tush push or going up the middle or something like that. That play obviously doesn't work, and they're only still up 7-0 in a game where points came at a premium. The only time the Patriots scored a touchdown is when you handed it to them on their doorstep. How valuable those 3 points could have been later in the game, obviously very huge.
Yeah, I mean, they were huge, and I'm sure there were some people who said at the time take the points as well. Man, I think it's kind of easy to say now. It was fourth and 1, right?
Yeah.
4th and 1.
Yeah.
So I'm almost always a fan of going for it on 4th and 1. If this was, 4th and 5 or something, and you gave up the 3 points, in favor of that, I think it's a little bit better case. Obviously, the way it played out, you're saying, man, those 3 points would have been critical. I thought actually even the late field goal, like I know you were going, hey, we've got to kick this thing at some point, but the conditions were so bad, ended up being a 46-yarder, I think, into just a blizzard.
Yeah.
I mean, even with that one, I was going, like, I know you don't feel like you can get some yardage here, but like let's dial something up here and try to stay on the field, because this is just asking a lot of your snapper, your holder, your kicker, and Mother Nature not to like just have a big gust when this ball's in the air. So I thought that was just a very low percentage kick. There's also been a lot of debate I saw in the last maybe 12 hours, guys, from people saying, should the chance to go to the Super Bowl be decided in those elements? And I because obviously we don't play Super Bowls in weather like that. They make it a point to where, you're going to be in a dome, you're going to be in a warm weather city, and I feel like football though is different. Like every other sport, baseball you cancel due to the elements, basketball you're indoors. I think in football there's an element of, if you're the best team, you got to find a way to be the best team regardless of what the weather's doing, regardless obviously of injuries. Like there's something about the NFL and the playoffs that there's a little bit of a survive in advance mindset to me. Like you're going to face different offensive schemes. You're going to face different defensive schemes from week to week. And also every now and then you're going to have to go play a quarter and a half in a blizzard. And I feel like that's just part of it. I personally loved that added element to the game, even though it just slopped the game up completely.
There's an element in football of adaptability, and snow is the more extreme of the conditions, but we see it in games where it rains and the field is wet and having to adapt to things like that. When it's really, really hot and you're having to obviously keep yourself in good shape to be able to finish out the game and not cramp and stuff like that. Football's a game where adaptability comes into play. And look, I loved it. Yeah, it ends up kind of being sloppy football at the end of the day, but who can play the better sloppy game ends up being the winner. And that's what we saw yesterday. I don't think if it was bright sunshine, the Broncos necessarily win that game over losing it in the snow. Maybe the score looks different. We score more points and all that kind of stuff. But I think the Patriots, in true Mike Vrabel fashion, found a way to adapt to the elements and ended up coming out on top.
Yeah, I mean, it's even for both sides, right? I mean, for the Broncos, this is two teams that they're used to playing in those elements,
Yeah.
This isn't I don't know,
Miami,
yeah. Right? That's a great example. These are teams that have certainly played in, and that was maybe an extreme example, but these are teams that are used to that. For Denver, the bigger issue for them is something that another thing you absolutely can't control, and that they're playing a backup quarterback,
right?
Who, by the way, was apparently cramping in the snow. I didn't know that was a thing. You see cramping in the heat.
Yeah.
It was just like so cold. His body's like, no, we're not doing this. But he was cramping apparently late. And, the Patriots made a few more plays. I mean, Drake May, apparently on that naked bootleg, like that was just his call. He's like, there's nobody here. I'm just running.
Yeah.
And he made one of the plays that we've seen Drake May make all year. What, 23 years old. Wes, we saw this guy at South Carolina's camp not that long ago.
Yeah.
He's a guy. He's a dude. And so I think, for were the conditions great? No, but both teams are playing in the conditions. Like I don't think you say football, which has always been some teams play in domes, whatever. Yes, you're right, Wes, about the Super Bowl. I don't think you can say, you know what, guys, it's snowing. We're going to just stop this thing and go play it somewhere else. Like, this is a part of the game. Everybody has to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good point you bring up about May because, look, I think Matt Stafford's still going to win the MVP, but Drake May likely going to be second in MVP voting, mainly off of what he's done with his arm this year. But when he had to make plays, guess what? He used his feet, and nobody's going to accuse him of being Cam Newton by any means, but he was very effective on the ground and got some critical conversions for the Patriots yesterday to help them win that game.
Yeah, very athletic family, obviously, there with the Mays. And, I mean, just how about the guts, we'll say, to call the naked boot, really just not even call it, just to do it. And I was sitting there going, man, that was a great call by Josh McDaniel. You kind of operated, so you implemented some misdirection. You almost used the elements to your advantage, yet it was still also a high percentage play. Like you weren't going to, turn the ball over or stop the clock. And then you come to find out that wasn't even the call. Do you guys think that they have the boot installed for him? Like, does he have that option on any handoff like that? Y'all think? Or did he literally just backyard football this thing? Because the center was quoted basically saying he turned around and saw the defense running the wrong direction according to what he was expecting. And I think there's a mild moment of panic. Like, did this ball get fumbled? Like, what? Why is everybody going over there? Mm-hmm. And you see May obviously running just to the marker for the first down.
For the sake of the lore of the moment, I want to think that it's YOLO ball.
Yeah.
Just like, you know what?
Well, I'm going
to make a split-second decision, and let's see if it works. So I'm going to choose to believe he just did it on his own.
Yeah. It really was like a backyard football game. I mean, you got guys falling. Jarrett Stidham. I don't know. There's a receiver down there somewhere. Yeah. Let me throw this ball up. Because there was one earlier where, they were kind of going through it, and he's like, he really thought about throwing that ball, and then he didn't. The next one, he's like,
he should have thrown that other one, though.
He should have thrown that. It was a better opportunity, I thought. But that one, you know what? This one we're throwing. Like, we got to make something happen here. And, then you got the Drake May scramble. I think it was full freelance.
Yeah. I will. Speaking of Jarrett Stidham real quick, because again, everybody's locked in like, okay, what can this guy do? Having not thrown a pass in a meaningful game in 2 years. When he uncorked that long ball to Mims early in the game, I was like, oh, hey, wait a minute.
Hey.
But then I was like, scripted plays. Let's give it some time. And again, didn't really hit on too many of those throughout the rest of the game. Gave a valiant effort. Obviously, a tough spot to be put in, but and I don't know if Bo Nix starts that game if they win that or not, but a tough spot for Stidham to be put in. And I don't know if that's going to net him the big contract with another team next year. Like those kind of situations tend to yield for guys like that.
Yeah, I mean, guys, I was going to say, I almost feel like the weather may have actually been good for Denver, even though they lost the game, because you have a backup quarterback. Like, it kind of almost negated what would have been your advantages, I feel like, in terms of throwing the football for New England. And it kind of evened things out. I did think it was kind of hilarious, though, when Romo dropped the thing that Dow Loggins would always say about the rain, how, people say the defense should have the advantage, but the offense should have the advantage because they know where they're going in terms of like not slipping. And then I'm pretty sure the very next play, right after he said that, looked like the ugliest, sloppiest offensive, just couldn't get your feet in the dirt type play ever. So, I mean, it wasn't necessarily pretty football, but it was pretty entertaining football.
Well, the Patriots punched their ticket to the Super Bowl. They'll take on the Seahawks after a couple of former Gamecocks have some pretty great performances last night in the NFC Championship. We'll discuss that coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
throws, and it is incomplete. Eamon Laurie again. That's a heck of a series for the rookie.
Wow, pass breakup on Nakua, pass breakup on Adams. They're on the halfback.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West, Chris, along with you here on your Monday on the Game. That was called last night on Fox. Kevin Burkhardt and Tom Brady singing some praises for Nicky Minori, who had a very strong night, again, in coverage on guys like Puka Nakua, Devontae Adams, holding the Los Angeles Rams offense in check just enough for the Seattle Seahawks to get the 31-27 win and return to the Super Bowl for the first time in the decade. Not the only Gamecock, though, last night. Ernest Jones also leading the team in tackles. And for a team that out on the West Coast, maybe people here locally haven't gotten to see as much of this year, you saw every bit of how good they are on defense, being led by a couple of former players here.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome to see for both of these guys because, we've had a chance to, Wes and I, to kind of follow these guys from start to finish. Finish being them, being on a Super Bowl team. Ernest Jones was, we were talking about it the other day. He was a low to mid 3-star guy. Carolina beat Duke on him, went out and covered his commitment ceremony. ESPN was not there, and just arrived with little fanfare. And I would argue, was quite a good player at South Carolina. But I think he's just one of those guys that's gotten even better. Like he's a better pro player even than he was at the college level. And then you think about Nick E. I still have the image burned in my brain of we're sitting there watching him in camp. I'd seen him play for Irmo, knew what he could do on the field, but then you see him out there in camp, huge, can run. And I still remember sitting there and the staff, Clayton White, Torian Gray, they're all sitting around, and Nick jumps about 45 inches in the air, picks off a ball during one-on-one at camps, and that was just like, all right, that's it. He gets his offer. They get him. Wake Forest was the other school they were battling, and just got better and better here, and now doing big things. I mean, Tyler, the two guys you just mentioned, those are two of the toughest covers in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And every time a ball is being caught, because the Rams, they have a great offense, as we know, and you look up and it's not Nick E. He's out there covering his man, breaking up passes. He made a bunch of big plays in the run game because he can play close to the line of scrimmage. Possible defensive rookie of the year.
Yep, and he's in the final voting for it, the final 5. We didn't talk about that last week, but yeah, he has an opportunity to win that in his first year in the league. And everybody likes to kind of talk about Seattle being Legion of Boom 2.0. Well, he's playing that Cam Chancellor type of safety role pretty well.
The thing about Nick is that, he did not have a ton of fanfare in high school for sure. But once you dialed in on this guy and once the word was out, you were like, okay, he's the best athlete on the field. Then he gets to South Carolina. He's playing SEC ball. And even, I'm sure there were some elite athletes along the way, but you're going, like, this guy might be the best athlete on the field. Just pure athleticism. Then he goes to the combine, and you knew if you were following him, you're like, all right, this guy's going to blow it up at the combine. Not only does he do that, people are talking about, hey, this might be one of the best combine performances in the history of the NFL combine. And then, here's the funny thing about great athletes. They always kind of reach a point where they look around and they're not the baddest dude in the room anymore. Well, Nicky is at the NFL level, playing in a conference championship last night, and looks exactly like the guy we saw suit up for South Carolina, but against the best athletes in the world from a football standpoint. And at no point did the speed and the athleticism around him kind of catch up to him and surpass him. Like, the ability at his length, at his size, to still be out there, to be closing in on passes and breaking them up, to be locking down in coverage, to be going up, like Chris said, making plays against the run as well. Now, here's what I think is lost with Nick. Very sharp football kid. Like, he knows the game. He knows ball. And the anticipation he plays with, the leverage he plays with, also very, very impressive. It's not all athleticism. As good of an athlete as he is, you cannot get by at the NFL level just on athleticism alone, and just could not be more impressed with what he was able to do. Ernest had a good game too, but Nick had the highest PFF grade on the entire Seattle defense last night, which I think is saying something.
And in terms of other things happening last night, when the other DB Woolen got the unsportsmanlike conduct penalty that took the Rams from being in 4th and 12 to a first down that would eventually lead to their final touchdown of the game. You saw Nicky was the one getting into his face on the sidelines, like, "Hey, man, you can't do that in that moment." Again, that's a rookie taking up that kind of leadership role there to kind of get everybody on the same page. And obviously the Seahawks still held on for the win, but that looked like that could have been a critical moment that really shifted the game in favor of the Rams.
He's just a true alpha. He just has all the. I mean, you saw him, and maybe some people I don't like that, but that one of the passes he broke up, Matt Stafford is coming off the field, and Nick's letting him know about it.
Yeah.
Like that. That's who he is. And he's got that. He's always had that mentality where, he often looks like the best dude on the field. He carries himself that way. He's playing with a ton of confidence. I mean, to find a rookie that can play like that and has the attitude but backs it up with his play, that's a pretty rare find. I'm kind of wondering, guys, and I'll admit I don't have much knowledge of I guess we'd have to ask Terry Ford. Like the Ravens obviously fell a little short this year. Malachi Starks is a heck of a player at Georgia, and I think probably had a pretty good year for the Ravens. I mean, he's out there playing, but I wonder if the Ravens are going, because that was the guy that got taken above Nick.
Right.
He was the second safety taken in the draft. I wonder if the Ravens are going, maybe we should have gone the Nicky direction there.
Yeah, I mean, by comparison,
and other teams.
Yeah,
too.
Nicky definitely had the better rookie year. Now, again, you can also say, okay, what's around him? How's the rest of the defense and all that kind of stuff? But yeah, I mean, unequivocally one of the best safeties in the league this year as a rookie, and could go on to win the MVP coming up here at the end of next week. But hey, that's a further great advertisement for the program here at South Carolina. Like, hey, we've already got a reputation putting DBs in the league. Look what you can do in your first year if you're a guy like Nicky.
Well, and guys, a Garnet Trust Hour veteran at one point as well.
That's right.
Remember, we've had Nicky on, so just continuing the excellence that comes with making an appearance on the show there. And here's the other thing about Nick too. Like that, there was a little bit of irony for me in that Nick also was able. He was talking some junk too. Like when that happened, I even was like, "All right, Nick, don't get called for taunting," but he walked the line well enough not to get called for it, whereas his teammate did not. And I'm not gonna lie, I thought after the Rams went right after that guy after the penalty, I was like, dude, this is gonna be an all-time blunder.
Yep.
If the Rams come back and win this game, because it just we're thousands of miles away, but just even through the TV, it felt like the entire momentum of that game shifted when that happened. So, shout out. I mean, great job by the Seahawks all year long. That's a phenomenal Rams team that they beat. And I'll be honest, I thought that the Seahawks had the better team, but I thought if it came down to Stafford with the football late in the game, I was like, the Rams are going to go win this game and break their hearts. And to their credit, Seattle got the late stop when they needed to.
By the way, in case you're wondering, Chris, you won buy or sell over the weekend, a perfect 5-0.
Oh my.
Yeah. You were the only one to guess we had a name on name matchup. Mike Vrabel, Mike McDonald.
Mm-hmm.
That was the last question. So you're riding your momentum from winning the season.
I would not have expected that.
You're on fire, man.
Okay.
What can I say? Coming up next, we'll get into what Dabo Sweeney had to say on Friday and a rant heard around the college football world. Coming up next, it is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the Game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris along with you here on your Monday on the game. And maybe you got lost in the shuffle of the weekend, but I feel like if you've been paying enough attention to college football in the past couple of days, you'll know what happened with Dabo Swinney and Clemson over the course of last week with Luke Farrelly, the transfer linebacker from Cal that had come to Clemson. He had signed with them, got his NIL agreement, was taking classes at Clemson, and Ole Miss just comes in and snatches him. And now he's going to be an Ole Miss Rebel for a pretty hefty payday. And on Friday, Dabo Swinney had a press conference, and we expect him to address it, maybe not quite as in-depth and in detail as he did. And at the end of said press conference, he had a message for all the other coaches out there about tampering.
And to be honest with you, this is crazy. To me, this situation is like having an affair on your honeymoon. That's basically what we're dealing with. And I know for a fact that this is happening at other places. Because you know why? Because I've had a bunch of coaches over the last week that have reached out to me. And they're going, well, let me tell you what's happened to me. Let me tell you what I know. Let me tell you my story. I've had a lot of people reach out with their stories. And so I want to challenge all of those coaches that have reached out to me. I want to challenge all of them. You need to step up and call it out. Otherwise, don't complain. You either step up and you be an example to young coaches in this profession and be people of integrity, or just shut your mouth and don't complain again. That's what I would say to all the coaches out there. Because I know this has happened. And we're never going to get this under control until we start having some consequences. We're just not. It's just that simple.
So Dabo's obviously somebody that does not like to swear unless he's being asked about Will Muschamp. But you can hear in the pauses in there, it's taken every ounce of him that he has to not say four-letter words that we couldn't say on the radio. That's how fired up he is about this. And again, we poke fun at Dabo and Clemson and all that kind of stuff, but this is the most egregious example of tampering perhaps we've ever seen in college sports up to this point. Could be worse ones coming down the road. But this seems like, we talked to Chappell Fowler earlier on this morning. He said an inflection point of if something's going to change, the details of this, timestamps, money amounts, text messages, if anything's going to change, this would be the kind of thing to make it happen.
Yeah, I think a few things in there. So there are tons of examples because it happens. It's widespread of quote unquote tampering. Guys are at schools and they're not in the portal and they're basically prompted to get in the portal. I mean, Barry Odom, another head coach, had a great example the other day. Said, look, a lot of these agents send out lists of their clients to, hey, if you're interested in this guy, none of them are in the portal, let me know. And he said, they accidentally sent us one with a bunch of our guys on it, and that does happen all the time. This one was more egregious because you've literally got a guy who is on campus going through workouts at a school that had just signed
in class,
and it happens if guys have already been at a program, they've been in class, like you see that, but the timing of it all, where the guy was in the portal, he picked his new school, he just started there. It's just a more extreme example. You also have a lot of documentation of it. It's not just like GM to agent, text, like you literally have the head coach doing it. And then the other element is you have the sitting head coach of the other program giving this very, reading from notes, quoting, like you don't see that, And so the things that come to my mind is, could this be a point where, with an Alabama kid who used to play for Alabama, who went to the G League for a few years and is now playing for Alabama again, will all these different things finally make both sides come together and say, look, we got to figure out something here? You kind of sense maybe, but you still have to actually get there.
Right.
What is the actual recourse? Because you hear out of Clemson, they're looking at legal recourse, looking at all those different things. I'll be fascinated to see, is there actually any recourse? Really, from a legal standpoint, just legal meaning in the courts, you can't really stop a kid from saying, I'm going to leave this school and go to another school. Per NCAA and CSC rules, sure. But like what trumps what? I think that's the question now.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions. I mean, if we have lawsuits basically, I guess, arguing how much value, these kids bring to their universities. And then obviously part of rev share is that they are in turn being paid for that value. Is there a case to be made that Ole Miss damaged Clemson by going against the rules and poaching one of their guys who was not in the portal, from a legal standpoint? And, I think there are a few different fascinating things to this for me. One, a lot of this stuff, as you guys said, goes on with the agents. So might feel like tampering by the letter of the rule, technically is not tampering. The difference here is that the head coach was allegedly and just blatantly texting the kid while he was already at Clemson. I would imagine, and maybe I'm ignorant on this, I don't think there's many head coaches dumb enough to be all doing that, honestly, because that's a great way to get yourself caught. Like you can easily have the conversations with the agents, and it's a third party, and there's frankly at this point, the way it's structured, nothing that can be done. And so, part of what Dabo said there, though, that everybody needs to turn other people in. Well, what schools, maybe not to this degree where your head coach is directly messing a player, how many schools are not dealing in some way with an agent who is representing somebody who is at another school and not in the portal? So that's why people don't get turned in, because, oh, you're pointing the finger at me. Well, I'm going to point the finger right back at you because you did the same thing. So are there enough schools that aren't operating in this way in any way for people to get turned in? I would say there's probably not enough schools doing that. And then finally, how about Ole Miss offering a linebacker $2 million over 2 years, but still, that is insane money for a linebacker who, maybe if this guy was like the Jeremiah Smith of linebackers, like this guy was just clearly the best linebacker in the country, that would be one thing. But it feels like some desperation there from Ole Miss to me.
Yeah, and going back to the point, it's hard to blame Farrelly for being a 18, 19-year-old kid, however old he is, going into a sophomore year of college, and suddenly, and by all accounts from the text message exchange, stuff like that, he was adamant to want to stay at Clemson. But at some point, that carrot becomes too big to ignore that they're dangling out in front of you. Like, man, that's $2 million. That's some life-changing money right there. It's very hard to say no to. So again, it's more kind of a product of the system we have now, and we'll see, if Ole Miss gets punished for anything, and two, if this actually leads to any kind of substantial change across college sports, looped in there with the Bediako thing, as you mentioned, Chris, a moment ago, where he had a G League player just show up at Alabama, play a game, and if the ruling goes a different way tomorrow, then he can't come back. And he played one game for them that they lost to Tennessee, but still, they saw an opportunity to have an advantage. They tried it, didn't work for that game, but we'll see what happens tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine if because the other thing Dabo said was this should be a very quick, investigation. They've turned all this stuff in. If nothing happens of substance, what does that mean? Could be the NCAA is like, I mean, that would be kind of the final straw in showing that they can't really do anything, So that's what I'm fascinated. Do they try to do something?
Except delay your eligibility ruling for 9 months.
They can do that. Yeah,
that's about it.
Yeah. So what, if anything, did they do? Maybe we find out something soon.
Yeah, we'll see. But this definitely seems like a very important point in this whole process of if things are going to change. Now would certainly be the time. We'll come back, wrap up the hour. Women's basketball dominated the hardwood yesterday against the top 5 team. We'll discuss that to wrap up the hour. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here in the game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West, Chris, along with you here, wrapping up the hour here on your Monday on the game. You know, sometimes in sports you're the windshield, sometimes you're the bug. Unfortunately, last week South Carolina played the part of the bug when they went on the road to Norman, Oklahoma, and lost to, at the time, the number 16 Oklahoma team. And you were worried a little bit as they came back home to take on a number 5 and previously unbeaten in conference play Vanderbilt team, how they would fare. But very quickly in that game, I don't know, Vanderbilt made it close in the third quarter, got the game back down to single digits, but South Carolina did exactly what South Carolina does coming off of losses, where they go out there and dominate whoever their next poor opponent is. This case happened to be a really good team, but they look like they returned to form yesterday with their pretty convincing 103-74 win over Vanderbilt.
That's the thing that's impressive about this is this wasn't just a random, even a random SEC team that they just walloped. This is a team that literally had not lost. One of 2 undefeateds in the country, Vanderbilt and UConn. And so it was going to be a challenge, and they were game from the opening tip. What they have 3 straight steals and buckets. The defense was outstanding at the beginning of the game. I thought Raven Johnson did a really good job. I mean, Michaela Blakes is going to, get hers, and she did. Raven had to go out with the 2 early fouls, but she did a great job. South Carolina, I think, also had everything just came together in this game for them, and that they were making a lot of shots. We saw in the Oklahoma game, shots weren't falling. They were taking some poor shots. This game, I thought they took a lot of really, really good shots, and you got to have those fall to blow out an undefeated team, and they did. But I thought their defense also was just excellent. They set the tone very, very early. I can't remember what was the stat. They've been through almost 300 games without losing back-to-back games.
Yeah.
And that's what we were talking about after the Oklahoma game. All right, will Dawn Staley be able to use this as, you never want to lose a basketball game, but will this be kind of a hinge point for her team where they can say, look, there's some issues here that got exposed. What do we need to fix? And we saw her make some lineup tweaks, some personnel tweaks, and everything that they did for the most part in the game hit. And Vandy's still a really good team.
Mm-hmm.
So
probably see him again.
They can hit some shots. They've got Blake's, the freshman point guard, I think that they have. Galvan was flustered early, but she even came back and made some plays. That's a really good basketball team, but just nobody's going to be a match for South Carolina if they play that well. I think that was almost an outlier in how well they played, even for a team that's this good. But, man, it really all came together in that one for them.
Yeah, they first of all, Vandy shot the ball pretty well in this game. It's just the fact they just could not keep pace with South Carolina and turn the ball over. South Carolina was able to convert, and the turnovers, I think you would say, were created by South Carolina. It wasn't just Vandy being loose with the basketball. The announcer said going into the game, hey, Dawn Staley was hot in warmups. Like, she really apparently kind of tried to push this team's buttons and really just forced them to step up to the plate and challenge them a little bit. They answered right off the bat. Like Chris said, a little bit different lineup. How about the fact that South Carolina showed some, I would say, lineup flexibility? They start McKeer, who I think is just, for a freshman, has actually quietly been really good for South Carolina. She added, a little extra just kind of spark and athleticism to start the game. And then you go out there, and as the game goes on, of course, you sub Okot in. You get Alicia in there. At one point, so you went from having like a super athletic lineup to having 2 girls that are 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", in that range, and can just provide really, really great size in the post. And so you had some flexibility there. And also just, you got 21 from Latson, who did not score the basketball well against Oklahoma. She bounced right back and was very, very good on Sunday. You got 20 from Tessa. You got 16 from Joyce. Okot was 17 off the bench. 10 from Raven. It was just a complete team effort. And, Joyce just filled up the sheet on this thing. 7 rebounds, 6 assists, just 1 turnover, a block. it was just really a complete team effort from South Carolina, getting just really strong performances from, I mean, gosh, just about the entire team.
So again, South Carolina hands Vanderbilt their first loss of the season. That puts them, or gives them the advantage in second place in the conference as of right now. Tennessee still unbeaten in conference play, sitting at 6-0. They'll see the Lady Vols coming up here in a couple weeks. Obviously, tons of more challenging matchups to come, starting with Tennessee. They'll face LSU, Alabama, and Ole Miss. All four of those teams ranked as of right now in a row. So again, more challenges to come, but obviously, as expected, Don Staley's team bounced back in the fashion we expect him to. Last 30 seconds, any thoughts on men's basketball on Saturday you guys want to share?
Yeah, I mean, guys, I was just looking over some of the stats. A team that's built to need to make shots, and they have not been making shots. This is a team that is 13th in conference at making three-pointers. I mean, they're last in the league in rebounding. I think those are the two things that you probably point to.
That's we talk about the main factors of basketball. Those are usually indications of how good you're going to be, and unfortunately, the Mott's crew just not getting it done right now.
I feel like, guys, it's comparable to like blocking and tackling in football. If you're not blocking or tackling, you're probably going to struggle. And if you're not making shots and not rebounding the basketball when you miss them, then yeah, it's a terrible recipe.
They'll be back in action, both those teams, later on this week. We'll talk about that as the week goes along. That'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on the Game.